Hello, good citizens. My name is Dan. This is a follow-up video to the phone call I received when I got home after my team and I served Alex Yelovatz of VicPD a lawsuit at his home. Now, in the last video, you heard a recorded phone call that I had with Central Saanich Police Department's Sergeant Paul Brailey. And you may have heard some things that left you questioning why this phone call was made and why the police responded to a non-crime and removed legal court documents of a civil matter that were legally served on the named defendant. It also seemed during this call that Sergeant Paul Brailey gave a false name, not only speaking it, but also spelling it out, as if he's trying to hide his identity or mislead me as to who he is. Personally, I've never heard of someone with such a high-powered position of public trust that had a tendency to forget not only how to spell their own last name, but also forget their own last name, or at least confuse it for a different last name. Weird, eh? Now, admittedly, I thought this was a very cordial and professional call, and Sergeant Brailey only had innocent intentions when calling me. He even told me that he didn't think I did anything wrong. In fact, I had almost deleted this call shortly after I recorded it, as it seemed to me of no value, so why hang on to it, right? Well, that would have been a huge mistake on my part, because not long ago, a little birdie told me some information about a police file that was created about that night in question. So I did a Freedom of Information Act request through the Central Saanich Police Department. The records department staff was on vacation, so this FOIA request was put together by the chief, Les Sylvan, and what I got was heavily redacted. So when you're someone who's known for publishing unlawful acts committed by police and prosecutors, this is what you get. Page after page after page. They don't want me to know what they're trying to do when they all get together and try to pull a fast one on our justice system. Now, there is some info that they did release. Thankfully, I never published that phone call from the previous video, so they had no idea it existed. And because of that, they decided to collude on a police false narrative that supports the previous police false narratives that all started in 2015 when Greg Hronowich of VicPD started this false narrative when he got butthurt because I shut him down, and he got embarrassed because a supervisor agreed with me about my rights that apparently Greg didn't know. And because I stood up to Greg's tyranny, I was gifted with the permanent designation in the Canadian police system as a, quote, very anti-police, unquote, person. And as a person who is flagged for violence. Thanks for that, Greg. So this is what Sergeant Sergeant Brailey is now going to play a role in furthering this police false narrative that started in 2015. And I'm going to introduce you to a few new names that also played big roles in the police playing legal hijinks with an innocent person's life. What you're about to see is a textbook example of how police departments discredit themselves and their profession, all in their own words. So I'm going to read to you what little they gave me, and after, we'll compare it here with the phone call from the last video. Here we go. So this is the Central Saanich Police Department file. It starts out with a charge of criminal harassment. Wait, what? Yes, they charged me with criminal harassment and tried to get a peace bond, which is basically a restraining order. And here it is, folks. When the police find out you're someone who knows their rights, stands up for their rights, and fights back for their rights, this is what they do to you. And this is what they write about you. Listen to this. According to this document, the lead investigator was Sergeant Andy Duke. The file was submitted by Corporal Patrick Bryant, and this file was approved by the Deputy Chief, Derren Lench. And in this document, we see that Sergeant Paul Brailey, Sergeant Paul Brailey assigned Corporal Patrick Bryant to this file. Interesting. It's worth noting here that everyone I've mentioned so far is of the highest rank at the Central Saanich Police Department. These are the people that you would expect to be the most knowledgeable and professional persons who we put enormous amounts of public trust powers into. So let's do a little reading on what these guys have to say, shall we? Investigating Officer Bryant is recommending a 810 peace bond in this matter. Bryant feels Dan has no reason to be attending residence when he did, dressed in dark clothing, refusing to identify himself at the front door when asked to do so in itself would cause a person's to fear for their safety. No reason to be there. Huh. Here's one reason. I was serving a lawsuit. Here's two reasons. Showing up at the police station to serve a lawsuit when the police member is there, you may have to come back 4 or 5 times because they refuse to come out and accept the papers, like Ron Kirkwood did. And I guess here's a third reason, is because Alex Yelovatz has a tendency to assault people, and he left his address up for all to see on an easy Google search. So I guess if I just go to his address while he's home, that would certainly cut down on the amount of time I would spend tracking him down, as he knows he can evade service. Here's a fourth reason. Staff Sergeant Matt Waterman told me at VicPD not to film in their lobby. So there's 4 reasons. So really, if it wasn't for Ron Kirkwood evading service and Matt Waterman telling me not to film at VicPD anymore, and Alex Yelovatz himself leaving his own address on an easy Google search, I would not have been able to serve Alex Yelovatz at his home. So yeah, I had many reasons. Dark clothing. Ooh, let's see now. Dark clothing. I've been wearing dark clothing for 30 years now. Whoops, sorry about that. In fact, this particular evening was extremely cold for our area, and appropriate clothing was a must. Didn't ID cause persons to fear for their safety? Well, what about my fear for my safety of Alex Yelovatz? Doesn't my video of Alex Yelovatz charging at me, pushing his flashlights into my head that left a mark, pushing me off a sidewalk and blinding me with a very high-powered flashlight at point-blank range into my eyes, refusing to ID himself, acting oppressive and abusive to a citizen, imposing his will, exceeding his duty, and abusing his authority, committing acts that are contrary to the Criminal Code and the British Columbia Police Act, not to mention the violations of my guaranteed rights and freedoms that every Canadian has. Wouldn't that cause a person to fear for their safety? What about that, Corporal Patrick Bryant? Did you even consider that? Obviously not. I'm going to guess that this is Corporal Patrick Bryant's first time writing up a police file. Clearly, he does not understand the basics of Law Enforcement 101. Maybe that is an overall issue down at Central Saanich Police Department, especially with the other very high-ranking members on this file. The lead investigator was Sergeant Andy Duke, and this whole file was approved by Deputy Chief Derren Lench. What happened, guys? And I'll go back into this in greater detail at the end of this video. It turns out to be a very high-handed tactic. Here's another partial statement from Corporal Patrick Bryant. Members of the Central Saanich Police Service, Sergeant Paul Brailey and Constable Shia attended. Papers had been served by or on behalf of Dan at 10:38 p.m. hours. Brailey contacted Dan with the number provided on the face of the notice of claim. Dan had advised that he had attended at the residence in an attempt to serve the documents. Investigating officer recommending a charge approval for criminal harassment, section 264, subsection 3 of the Criminal Code, with the final outcome being a section 810 peace bond. So you can see here, Corporal Patrick Bryant believes I have committed the criminal act of criminal harassment, a potentially serious indictable offense equal to a felony in the United States. And Corporal Patrick Bryant believes there needs to be a peace bond or a restraining order, all because I legally served a named defendant at their home. Now, the effects of this are more serious than you may think. If I need to amend or make changes to the notice of claim, then I must serve an amended copy to Alex Yelovatz. So if there's a peace bond in place, then that effectively halts my lawsuit altogether. This is also an extremely egregious way to pervert our justice system by shutting down a civil matter and a person following the proper court process, with retaliatory criminal proceedings in which only the police are complainants or witnesses. So let's read the statements that Sergeant Paul Brailey made in this police file. Then we'll see how he does when compared to the recorded phone call.